Om Ajnanatimidandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Dhena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Labvam Sudulabamidam Bahusam Bhavante Manushamartadam Anityam Apihadhira Turnyam Nateta Navishesha. The Shastra says that it's very rare. Labvam Sudulabamidam Bahusam Bhavante, 11th canto. To get the human form of life, you can look it up in your shloka book. It'll be in this one, Srila Prabhupāda shlokas, selected verses. And Labvam 275. Let's look up page 275. We can look at this beautiful verse. 275? 275. Correct. 275. The Avadhuta Brahman speaking this verse. Labvam sudurlabam idam bahusam bhavante. Labvam sudurlabam idam bahusam bhavante. Manusyamartanam anityam apihadhira. Manusyamartanam anityam apihadhira. Turnam yatetana patet anumrityu yavan. Turnam yatetana patet anumrityu yavan. Niksheyasaya vishaya kalu sarvatasya. Translation: after many, many births and deaths, one achieves the rare human form of life, which, although temporary, affords one the opportunity to attain the highest perfection. Thus, a sober human being should quickly endeavor for the ultimate perfection of life, as long as his body, which is always subject to death, has not fallen down and died. After all, sense gratification is available even to the most abominable species of life, whereas Krishna consciousness is only possible for a human being. So the Shastra is telling us that we have great opportunity in the human form of life, and ordinary endeavors for material gain, this is the pravriti marg, are not as desirable as the nivriti marg, or leaving the world behind for the sake of going back to the spiritual world. And in the process of going back to Godhead and becoming fully Krishna conscious, using the human body for what it was built for specifically, which is to come to the perfectional stage of loving God. There is a process, and as with any process, there is practice and knowledge required, and there are also missteps on the path. People take to the path of devotional service and then give it up. Happens all the time. And tonight we're going to talk a little bit about what is the cause for falling off the path of devotional service. Now, I'll start with a bit of good news, and that is that even if one falls from the path of devotional service, the progress is not lost. You get forward progress. Forward motion is counted, just like in a football game. If you're made it far enough and they push you back, you still got that far. And so Krishna says to Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita that if you take to the process of devotional service, but you happen to fall away from it, you'll take it up in your next life where you left off. And for those who have practiced for a long time in the yoga system, they will take birth in a family of transcendentalists. For those who practice for a short time, they'll take birth in a very wealthy family. And there's a way in which the person also goes to the heavenly planets for some time and then comes back down. Krishna explains all that. And Tyaktva Sadharmam Charanam Bhujam Harer Bhajana Pakvo Ta Patet Tato Yadi Yatra Kwa Babajam Abuda Mushakim Kovarta Apto Bhajatam Sudharmata. Narada Muni says, Tyaktva Sadharmam Charanam Bhujam Harer. And that is, Tyaktva Sadharmam, if you give up your occupational duty,
172 page.
172. Hey, what is this? 170 what?
2.
This verse, Narada Muni speaking to Vyasadeva, and he says that if someone gives up their occupation, tyaktva sadharmam charanam bhujam harir, and takes to serving the lotus feet of the Lord, bhajana pakvo ta patettodoyadi, but they are apakva, means they weren't ripe. They didn't quite make it all the way. Then they fall back down again. Patet, they become fallen again. He says there's no loss for them. But on the other hand, he said, if someone took to their occupation perfectly, and they never took to devotional service, but they're very successful in their occupation, what was the gain for them? What did they actually get? You just used up the human form of life to do what a beaver can do, which is build a dam. What a bee can do, and birds are smart too. They can build houses. It's not a big deal. We're not interested in that. Kama syanendriya pritir labo jivita yavata jivasya vajjignasya narto yascheha karmabi. Human form of life is meant to use the senses only in as much as you're able to balance the senses so that you can inquire. You want to use your energy for this. So, if you make progress and you fall back down again, you'll take up that progress. But why fall down? Therefore, the Shastras give us information of how not to fall down. And we should take it. In fact, it's a regulative principle that one should not fall down in devotional service. One should be very careful. But the very fact that there are so many warnings that one can fall down means that people do fall down. So, let's look at a few points in the anatomy of a fall down. Because in this way, by reverse engineering, we can also fortify ourselves from watching our own mentality and our own steps as we move forward in devotional service, so that we don't take a misstep. The first admonition, and who has the dictionary tonight? Just always put out the dictionary, it'll be good. The first admonition is, beware of Māyā. Everyone say, beware of Māyā.
Beware of Māyā.
Yeah, beware of Māyā. You have to beware of Māyā because she's everywhere. And how far away, when you turn on the light, you go into a dark room and you turn on the light, how far away is the darkness after you turn the light on? You walk in the room and you turn on the light, how far away is the darkness? It dissipated pretty quickly, but how far away is the darkness? Not very far. It's right there. If you turn the light off again, or it becomes blocked somehow, darkness comes right back. It's immediately right there. Krishna Surya Sama Maya Haya Andakar. Therefore, Shastra says, wherever there's Krishna, there's light. Wherever there's Maya, there's darkness. So the minute we're not Krishna conscious, we go into Maya. So there are two regulations in Scripture, of which all the other regulations in Scripture are servants. The two regulations are ark. First one's ark. Everyone say ark. And second one is NFK. ARK and NFK. Say ARK. NFK. ARK. NFK. So you can sign off on your emails. ARK, NFK. And what people wonder what you're saying. First one is always remember Krishna. Ark. Say ark. Ark, ark. Very good. Always remember Krishna. And the other one is NFK, never forget Krishna. So these are the two rules. And all the other rules in the Shastra, every single one of them is a servant of these two rules. You're standing by ready to serve. So if you can remember Krishna somehow or other, yena tena prakarena Krishna Mana niveshayet. One way or another, you should fix your mind on Krishna. And Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Man mana bhavavad bhakto. Think of me. And then he gives all kinds of ways that you can think of him. Name 3. Water chanting. He's in his holy name. He says of sacrifices, I am chanting the holy name's japa. And the taste in water? Taste in water is Krishna. One more. Sun? Sun and moon, seeds, everywhere. Krishna's manifested the material energy, what to speak of the internal energy. So now, one thing is that Māyā presents a package that is perfectly suited for each victim. It's very subtle. So don't think that you can outsmart Māyā, because she's way smarter than we are. Giriraj Maharaj told me this sentence. I thought it was worth repeating. Māyā presents a package that is perfectly suited for each victim. It's very subtle. So don't think Māyā will come in with a big sign, say, hi, my name's Māyā. And I'm here to disturb your progress in devotional service. Māyā will come in a way that you can justify it. Think, oh, yeah, but, you know. And we'll get to that in a minute. So remember that. It's very subtle. Māyā is very subtle and presents a package that is perfectly suited for each victim. That's for me. Māyā sneaks in through the door of pride. As soon as we have pride, it opens the door. That's how she gets in. So here are some symptoms of pride. I'm more advanced than others in my preaching style or methods. Someone might start thinking, I know more than everybody else. I really know how to present Krishna consciousness better than others. You're performing your service, same time pride is sneaking in, the door is opening for Māyā to come in, even while preaching. Now sometimes people ask, how can a person who's preaching, how can they fall down? This is how, because the false ego is standing there ready to appropriate everything that we do. The false ego wants to appropriate everything, no matter what it is. Say, I'll take that. I'll use that for myself. So be very careful of the subtleties. And here's a couple statements. I'm liberated because I've been practicing Krishna consciousness for how many years? 1 year. So I'm liberated. I'm liberated because I'm a member of fill in the blank. I'm liberated because what?
I chant some 32 rounds.
Because I chant 32 rounds. I'm liberated because
I eat prasadam.
I eat prasadam. I'm liberated because?
I'm initiated.
Huh?
I'm initiated.
I can't hear you.
I'm initiated.
Because I'm initiated. I'm liberated because I'm a son of a Brahmin. I'm liberated because I go to temple daily. There's so many ways in which I could say I'm liberated, then. And then comes the next sentence that Māyā slips in. Therefore, even though it's prohibited in the scripture or by my spiritual master, I can fill in the blank. I can skip my
Rounds.
I don't have to read. I don't have to offer this. I don't have to offer my food. I'm liberated. This is a kind of pride that comes up as one's practicing devotional service. To say, I'm liberated. I'm better than others. I'm already above it all. Therefore, Māyā says, therefore, take it easy. You can take a break. You don't have to do that. And the minute you start cheating, the minute you start taking away from your serious, strict, and sincere sadhana, then the erosion begins. And gradually, you can forget all about it. I've met people who chanted for many years, and then they couldn't even remember how to say Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Sri Advaita Gadadhar, Shivasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda. Years later, after gradually giving up their chanting and then going away. And what Māyā does is present something else and says, this is a nice alternative to this Krishna consciousness. It's actually pretty good. why didn't I think of this before? This is what Māyā presents if we're not very careful. So we shouldn't think ourselves liberated. And justification always comes with Māyā's offer. The intelligence gets involved, and once the intelligence justifies the little fall down or the big fall down, it's very difficult to come back. Justify it. That means I had to do it. They made me do it. Because of the circumstances, I had to do it. There's no circumstance in which you have to fall down. It's a misuse of free will, or you put yourself in a position where you're vulnerable to falling down. Don't let your intelligence justify it. Close the door on pride, everyone say.
Close the door on pride.
This is one of the great secrets of not falling down. Keep the right attitude. First is, I'm never above chastisement. So we should be willing to be chastised, and we can test ourselves. Someone corrects us even a little bit, and we feel, what are you talking about? I'm liberated. What do I need that for? Why do I need chastisement? I'm liberated. So this is, you could notice it in yourself. If you recoil at being corrected, what to speak of chastise, that's a heavy word. We use it all the time because it's in Prabhupāda's books. Some of the kids who were in Gurukul, they picked up that word, and then they went into public school and they used words like that, and the teacher, where did you learn to speak English? Very eloquent English. So we should check ourselves to see if we're open to being chastised and being corrected. And we should look for it, look for correction. And that's, if we're trending towards being open towards correction and chastisement and so forth, then we know we're trending towards the right attitude. Next is, I'm not liberated. Don't consider yourself liberated. Consider that I'm a fallen soul, I'm a fool, I'm the servant of the servant, which is the other attitude. I'm the servant of the servant of the servant. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati used to say, don't try to be a great devotee. Just try to be a good devotee. That's a better proposition. Don't think I'm a great writer, I'm a great preacher, I'm a great going to Mangalartik person, I'm a great anything. Just think, I'm trying to be good. I'm trying to be steady, and I'm trying to be the servant of the servant of the servant. And if we keep ourselves in this position of servant of the servant, then we become fortified, that close the door on pride. Discussion. Any point so far that's stuck in your mind? What one thing sounded useful so far? Or struck a chord? Rajesh. Here comes the microphone.
The Māyā enters in the brain, in a very subtle form, because I thought it is pretty apparent when Māyā is entering, but I think it's a good point because you never notice when it will enter, so that's a danger.
Thank you. Good point. That's a elaboration on this point about how she's subtle, that you don't even notice that she came in. So it's good to check yourself. When you go out walking in West Virginia or on the East Coast, if you go through any grass area, when you come home, you got to check yourself for ticks. You have to look up and down and see if there are any ticks on you, because they'll burrow into your skin and you'll get Lyme's disease. So you have to be careful because they jump off and you don't see them. So similarly, we should check ourselves all the time and look up and down, do a body scan, so to speak, and see, did Māyā enter in anywhere? Okay. Yes. Other points that stuck?
The point that you mentioned about pride, that was, I think that's a very fundamental point, because we so often try to be humble. I'm guessing we might be becoming proud of our humility as well.
Yes.
Right. Though it sounds like a contradiction.
Tricky. The false ego is ready to appropriate. Oh, you were so humble. That's amazing. You're the most humble person there is.
Actually, Govind Charan Prabhu told me one short story about, can I?
Yeah.
Actually, it's about one Brahmana who's very proud about doing his Gayatri 3 times a day. And actually, once Kali comes and tells him, hey, you've forgotten to do it this day, the 3rd time. You slept off. Wake up and do your 3rd time the Gayatri. So he wakes up and does his Gayatri, and then he asks Kali, hey, you're supposed to actually dissuade me from this path. How come you are guiding me to do the Gayatri the third time. So Kali says, okay, that is the thing that you are so proud of. I need to sustain your pride. Otherwise you will actually feel that, oh, I broke this thing, and you will be less proud. So I thought that was very
Nice
subtle.
point, and it goes to the subtlety. You don't see when she's coming in. Nice. Yes.
Yeah, so be open to chastisement. I think that's the most difficult thing because it hurts when somebody is correcting you, but we have to be very open to that.
Nice. Good point. Go ahead.
Prabhu, like this on the same point, be open to be chastised and corrected. It's easy to be corrected when you are, someone corrected you from whom you are inspired, or it's your hero, idol hero. But someone other person who correct you, it's not easy to accept or something, So can you please give some sentence on that?
Yeah, you have to be ready to hear Krishna's voice coming from any place. I've probably said this before, that when you do book distribution and you go door to door, it's a good practice, because a lot of people reject you, or they'll tell you, get a job, why don't you do so? I mean, nowadays they don't say that so much, but they used to say to us all the time when we were young. People would constantly admonish us. They'd walk by and say, get a job, go do something useful, things like constant chastisement. And you have to learn to not react to that. So we should practice. We have to practice putting ourselves in a position where we're not reactive to those kinds of things. Of course, it's not also that at some point, and in the right circumstances, we stand up for the fact that we're a devotee and stuff like that. If somebody from a point of misinformation or something like that criticizes us because we're representative of Krishna consciousness, we have to correct them in an appropriate way if they're correctable. It's not that we just lay down and die. Yes.
Prabhu, I have a question about, you mentioned that, even if we fall down, we always progress further. I mean, it's not like, did I understand it correctly?
If you fall down from the position you're at, then at some point, depending on what the fall down was caused by, then you'll come back to that position again.
Okay. So my question was, Prabhu, does this same thing apply even for a fall down of Vaishnava Aparadha, where it's also explained that the most, that's the one aparadha that...
Fall down of?
Due to committing a Vaishnava Aparadha.
No, then, of course, eventually you'll come back, but you'll be waylaid for a long time, because this Vaishnava Aparadha destroys the progress in devotional service. And there's a reaction for it. In fact, the reaction lasts so long that it carries over to other lifetimes. And it stays with us until we actually achieve prema. That's explained in the Madhurya Kadambini, how there are reactions to sinful activities that are still affecting us. One of the symptoms of that is no taste. Someone say, but I'm not committing sinful activities now, and then Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, well, the symptom that you already did is because right now you don't have any taste. Okay? More points in the back? Yes.
So I really liked when you said, try not to be a great devotee, just a good devotee, because it's better to say I helped the person who's cooking prasadam rather than say I cook prasadam for the Lord. So I thought it was a really important fact.
Thank you very much.
Krishna.
Yes, Mukharavind, and then Gandharvika.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj, for a nice class. Guru Maharaj, I have a question, like if suppose some person is already fall down and he understands in this life that I have fall down, so is there any chance for him to going back home, back to God in this life only, or he has to wait for many lives? Because there's so many circumstances we fall down.
It depends entirely on the person, and we're going to talk a little bit about comebacks in a while. How to make a comeback. Yeah.
So this is a text message from Hansapriya Mataji.
Yes, Hansapriya.
I like the point that don't justify as it's a slippery slope.
Don't justify. Don't justify because it's a slippery slope. Once you start justifying one thing, then everything goes. Yes. Harivangsha.
Yeah, I really like the same point about the justification. I was reading Bhaktivinoda Thakur's commentary on Māyā, and he was saying that pride comes, then justification comes, and through that justification, deceit comes. You become deceitful, and you are not honest and truthful. You are moving away from Krishna. So justification looks so alluring and attractive, but it's actually one of the forms.
Pride, justification, deceit.
Deceit. Thank you.
PJD. You've got a case of PJD. Okay, Rajesh.
Yeah. Prabhuji, I have one question. When people fall down, as you said, they will start in the next life from the same spot, and then they take worth in the wealthy people. I sometimes get confused. Is taking worth in the wealthy people is an good, because if you have a wealth, you are kind of going to distract in any way, though. I mean, just
You could. That's the danger. It's not as good a position as the taking birth in the family of Vaishnavas. But the idea is that you have some kind of leeway to, actually cultivate ideas and, take up some practice. But generally, in that section of the 6th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that the impetus to take up the practice comes unsought to the practitioner who gave it up previously. Doesn't go looking for it. All of a sudden, at some point in his or her life, it becomes an imperative, and they think, oh, I should be practicing again. And then according to their circumstances, they have more, a kind of facility. But Krishna's perfect at arranging everything. He gives according to what's needed, what's also deserved by the person in order to move forward. A couple more? Yes.
I have a question, Prabhuji. Yes. It's as we perform devotional service in whatever way we can, Māyā still attacks. So what is the stage when Krishna will protect us from Māyā? When does that happen?
Krishna is always protecting us from Māyā. It's a matter of us taking advantage of it. Once a devotee said, but Prabhupada, Māyā is so strong. And Prabhupada says, Māyā is not so strong. You're so weak. So just like when you keep yourself healthy through a good diet, exercise, right kind of attitude, then you don't fall sick. And similarly in devotional service, if we take full advantage of the process, which is what we're talking about and we'll continue to talk about, then Krishna, we avail ourselves to Krishna's protection. I mean, the problem isn't that Krishna's not protecting us or giving us intelligence. The problem is I'm not listening and I'm not taking the help. That's the problem. But as we take to devotional service, Māyā will put obstacles. And for an advancing devotee, those are, in one sense, I mean, not that we welcome obstacles necessarily unless we're very advanced, but they do help to clarify our position. Without being tested, we don't know what our situation is. We say unflinching devotional service unless there's an opportunity to flinch. How are you going to know you're unflinching? And so the tests are there, and really Māyā is there to winnow out those who are not serious about going back to Godhead. But she's a devotee, and she's doing her job. Yes?
A little extension to the same justification thing. The question is, do we fall or does Māyā make us fall?
We fall. We're not obligated to fall, but we have independence that we can use to, we can use or misuse. If we use it properly, then we're rightly situated. And the Shastra gives a really simple explanation that bhayam dvitiya abhinibeshita syad ishad apetasya viparyayos smritihi tanmayato buddha abhajetam bhakyaika yesham gurudeva tatma. Bhayam dvitiya abhinibeshita syad. It's in the 11th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. You'll find it in your shloka books. An important verse. So bhaya means fear. and syat means to arise. So bhayam dvitiya abhiniveshita syat. As soon as we see a difference between ourselves and Krishna, and we turn towards Māyā, then we get absorbed in that external energy, and we become full of fear. Bhayam dvitiya abhiniveshita syat ishad apetasya. So ishad means God, means Krishna. Apetasya means to turn our head away. So it's we who turn our attention away from Krishna. Viparyayo smritihi means that our intelligence becomes contrary. It becomes turned around. Instead of being Krishna's servant, we become Krishna's competitor, which is ridiculous. Tanmayato puda abhajetam means that the intelligent persons, bhakyaika yesham gurudevatatma, that with one pointed attention and focus turns his or her attention back towards Krishna through taking shelter of the Guru and taking shelter of Krishna, and gets back on the path of devotional service. And then that person is back on the right path. Okay, so, yes?
There is a text, Prabhu.
A text?
Yes, from Sudeep, Prabhu.
It's from Sudeep?
Yes.
Fantastic.
In one of Srila Prabhupada's lecture, a disciple mentioned to Srila Prabhupada, "Oh Prabhupada, please forgive me. I came under the spell of Māyā." Srila Prabhupada replied, "You are always under Māyā. When you take Krishna's shelter, then you don't come under her sway." And then he says, enjoying the lecture very much, and his obeisances to you.
Haribo, Sudeep. That's nice. Okay. We said close the door on pride. That means to keep a right attitude. I am never above chastisement. I'm not liberated. I am a servant of the servant, and we should cultivate humility. So humility protects us, and it's also a symptom of advancement. We can cultivate humility, and we should also, let me see, here we have the Brihad Bhagavatamrita. I want to read to you a little bit about humility, if I may. If I can find it. 221:5. If you're keeping score at home, this is the Brihad Bhagavatamrita, Volume 3. And I'm looking at chapter number 5, and I'm turning to text 221. If you don't have a Brihad Bhagavatamrita at home, call me. We'll take care of you. We just ordered a whole shipload of them from 3-volume sets from Europe. Page number 232. This is chapter 5, text number 221. Okay. 222. Wise men define dainya as the state in which one always thinks oneself exceptionally incapable and low, even when endowed with all excellences. I'll read it again. Wise men define dainya, say dainya, as the state in which one always thinks oneself exceptionally incapable and low. Thinks oneself what? Exceptionally incapable and low, even when endowed with all excellences. So this is a paradoxical situation that the more qualified the devotee becomes, and it's not that it becomes a buffoon and can't do anything, but the devotee develops all kinds of talents, excellences in the service of the Lord, but thinks himself incapable and low. Commentary by Sanatana Goswami. Narada's own definition of dainya distinguishes his use of the word from other possible meanings, such as poverty, becoming selfless by not accepting charity, and being free from egotism. Someone might say that the quality of thinking oneself very fallen may also be seen in persons who are simply lazy, or those who abandon auspicious work or indulge in sinful acts. Therefore, Narada specifies that one who actually has dainya is endowed with all good qualities. For instance, such a person observes positive and negative regulations, he is free of false ego, and he has a healthy fear of material life. I'll read that again. For instance, such a person observes positive and negative regulations, is free of false ego, and he has a healthy fear of material life. Healthy fear of material life. That's another point we'll get to. Furthermore, though Narada doesn't say so, transcendental dainya is a state of extreme agitation that can lead to tears and other ecstatic outbreaks. Text 223. An intelligent person should carefully cultivate speech, behavior, and thinking that fix him in utter humility, and anything that stands in the way of it he should avoid. This is very practical. Would you like to repeat this verse? An intelligent person should carefully cultivate speech, behavior, and thinking that fix him in utter humility. And anything that stands in the way of it, he should avoid. Practical, isn't it? In the cultivation of humility. Text 224. Dainya is its most Dainya at its most exalted comes forth when prema, pure love of God, reaches full maturity, as it did in the women of Gokula when they were separated from Krishna. Commentary. Ordinary dainya can be developed by human effort, but there is also a type of dainya beyond the mundane that comes from receiving the Supreme Lord's favor. The word tu in this verse contrasts these distinct kinds of dainya. Almost everyone in the material world is separated from Krishna, but most people never experience dainya because they have no prema. Therefore, they can never become free from suffering and attain true happiness. To achieve transcendental dainya, one must learn to love Krishna in the mood felt by the gopis, led by Sri Radha, when Krishna left them to go to Mathura. We can understand from the example of the gopis, viraha bhav, their feelings of love and separation, that this special dainya arises only when, by Sri Krishna's exceptional mercy, a devotee who has realized Krishna's sweetness develops extraordinary prema in his heart in the mood of separation. As prema appears in degrees of excellence, so does dainya. Text 225. How is everybody so far? Chittahari's great. I like that. When dainya fully matures, prema unfolds without limit. And so we see dainya and prema acting in a relationship in which each is both cause and effect. This is how important humility is, called dainya, utter humility, that prema, love for God, and dainya go hand in hand. Commentary. If prema is supposed to be the final result of all devotional endeavors, how can dainya be a consequence of prema? In answer, yes, prema is the final goal, but dainya is not altogether different from prema. Dainya is an integral component of prema, and both foster one another. It is a misunderstanding to think that because there is always another level of perfection to achieve, one can never reach the supreme goal of life. What the progressive development of prema shows is not that there is no goal, but that in spiritual life there is endless variety. By pure love for the lotus feet of Sri Gopinath, the fruit one achieves is the attainment of Sri Goloka. By that attainment, the direct sight of Sri Gopinath, by that direct vision, his special mercy, by that mercy, the highest ecstasies of Viraha Bhav, and so on. This endless sequence is not a fault, but simply the unfolding of spiritual variety. Even in Vaikuntha, what to speak of Goloka, the bliss of devotional service unfolds in an infinite variety that puts the happiness of liberation to shame. Okay, there's a few points about dainya or humility, the cultivation of which is mentioned by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the 3rd verse of the Shikshashtakam. After he says, Durdaivam idrashami hajani naruragaha, I have no attraction for chanting the holy name. Even I understand it's Krishna. There's no difference that actually all his personal energies are present there in the holy name, but I have no attraction. Why? Durdaivam. I'm star-crossed. There's some influence that's coming over my mind and body where I can't develop that taste. What to do? What to do? What to do? Next verse. Trinadapi sunichena toror api sahishnuna amanina manadena kirtaniya sadahari. Become extremely humble. Trinadapi sunichena. You have to become lower than the straw on the street, more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and ready to offer all respects to others without expecting any respect for oneself. It's a relief, actually. The whole factory that goes on in one's mind, trying to position oneself so that I look better, so that I get the recognition that I deserve, it's a horse race that never ends. And it's painful, actually. It wears you out. But if you give up and you decide, I'm going to surrender to Krishna, and I'm going to go to the spiritual platform and leave behind this baggage of the false ego, and I'm going to cultivate humility, then not only do we get in a safe position, but we open the door for the taste of the holy name to come naturally from this humble position. So this is a very practical cultivation. Don't look any further. And this verse, Trinadapi sunichena, is lauded by the author of Chaitanya Charitamrita, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami Maharaj, who says that it contains jewels. What are the jewels? First, become like lower than the straw on the street. That's a jewel. More tolerant than a tree. That's a jewel. What else? Devoid of all sense of false prestige, ready to give all respects to others. So you take these jewels, and he said, now you make a garland from this verse. In other words, string the jewels and wear it around your neck. So you have to go to the hobby shop on the way home. What kind of hobby shops we have here in the Bay Area? Yarn Barn? What do you got? Huh? What's it called? Michael's. There you go. Who said Michael's? There's the man on the job. He knows how to fix stuff. Go to Michael's. Everyone go to Michael's on the way home if it's still open. Chittahari will tell you if it's open or not. And you get yourself some nice string. And when you get home, it's a home project. You have to take these jewels from this verse. First, extract the jewels from the verse, analyze them. What are they? Look at them very carefully. Brush them off. I've heard it a million times. Humility, I know, right? Take them out. Look at them again and say, this is the key to everything. Take the jewels, put them on the string, and wear them around your neck. And if you wear it around your neck, the next morning you wake up, your wife comes, your husband says, hey, why didn't you put a webba? And you're about to say, well, you never. And then you remember the jewels around your neck, and you say, I'm going to be humble, and I'm going to go pick that thing up and put it in the laundry, or whatever it is. And throughout your day, you remember, you go back to the garland around your neck, and then you take shelter of the holy names. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare. This is practical, and that garland will protect you from falling down. When Māyā comes and gives some opportunity, then you take the humble position. Okay, what to be careful of. One thing, actually these are a list of things that are given to us by none other than Rupa Goswami. Rupa Goswami has his eternal form, Sri Rupa Manjari, in the spiritual world, but he also appears in Chaitanya Leela. So these two Leelas are going on simultaneously and concurrently. That's why Prabhupada asked one of the artists in ISKCON to take the canvas and put on top the Rasa Leela, on the bottom the Panchatattva dancing in Kirtan, to show the parity between the two. They're going on simultaneously. Actually, this Navadvip is it's actually a neighborhood in Goloka, but just with a different mood called Audarya, and Goloka is the mood of Madhurya, or sweetness. But they're going on concomitantly, and Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Radha, Krishna, Nahiyanya. Radha and Krishna have combined in the form of Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's intimate servants in Vrindavan are Rupa and Sanatan. What are they doing there? Writing books, right? Nana Shastra Vicharanaika Nipano Shaddharma Samstapako. Exegetical work they're doing there. That's what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu told Sanatana Goswami. Sanatana Goswami had this idea. He got to Jagannath Puri and he said, I'm committing suicide because I'm useless. My body has all these sores on it, and when I come near the temple, the discharge from the sores, I'll either touch one of the pujaris, make a big offense. And the other thing was when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu saw Sanatana Goswami, every time he would embrace him, and the oozing pus from the sores on his body would smear on the body of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and Sanatana Goswami said, I shouldn't be living. And he said, I came here to actually make advancement, but I'm making just offense after offense. So then he got this idea in his head that when the Rath Yatra day would come, he, in the presence of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, would dive in front of the Rath Yatra cart and give up his life. He didn't tell anybody, but Vedaham samatitani vartamanani charjuna bhavishani chabutani mamtu veda nakashchana. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, I know everything. So one day, while Sanatana Goswami was at the house of Haridas Thakur, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared suddenly. He used to come there every day to see Haridas Thakur. And he said to Sanatan, your idea of committing suicide is not approved by me. And then Sanatan could understand. He's omniscient. He understands my mind. And he said, did Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that if I could attain Krishna by giving up my life in suicide, I would have done it millions of times already. He said, this body already gave it to me. How can you take it back? He turned to Haridas Thakur and said, what is the character of this person? He's given me his body, and now he wants to throw it away. Haridas Thakur said, unless you tell us, my Lord, we're not sure of what your intentions are. Then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, your body is my property, and I want you to use it to establish this Krishna consciousness movement. He sent him to Vrindavan, and in Vrindavan he had him write books, as well as excavate the holy places, which he did. That's the work of spreading the Krishna consciousness movement. When one is a servant of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he or she works in very practical ways, publishing books, building temples, going on yatras, doing work that is for preaching Krishna consciousness. Seems very practical, but that kind of Dāsa, that kind of menial service to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, using all of one's senses, this kind of sadhana leads one to Eshe Vrindavan Radhe Sham Pave Darshan Gaura Kripa Hole He Gaura Kripa Hole He Gaura Kripa Hole He. If we get the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, then at the end we'll have the darshan of Radha and Krishna. And Prabodhananda Saraswati Thakur says in his Chaitanya Chandamrita, Yata Yata Gauda Padara Vinde, that just by serving the lotus feet of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, naturally the heart becomes flooded with love for Radha and Krishna. So we should follow in the footsteps of Rupa Goswami, and part of that is taking what he's written, and we take it as our life and soul. And if we just follow this, then we'll be able to avoid the perils of falling down. And here are some of the things he said to be careful of to avoid falling down in your devotional service. Number 1, atyahara, means over-collecting. Don't collect more than you need. What kind of things can you over-collect? Money. You can over-collect money. You don't need that much. Most people, in fact, there's a book called Die Broke. And it's by a financial advisor. And he says, why is everybody keeping so much money? You work hard your whole life, save it all up, pass on to your kids. Why? Just spend it all and then leave broke, right? Kids, cover your ears. Okay, so atyahara, don't collect and collect and collect and just think about it. Use it, in Krishna's service. What other things can you over-collect? Shoes. Yeah. Imelda Marcos had thousands of pairs of shoes. She was the prime minister's wife in the Philippines. That seems to be a popular one. You can't even wear them all. You just think about them, collect them, and so forth. So don't collect. You can also over-collect knowledge. There's a way in which, in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Kaviraj Goswami says, don't become a bookworm. If you become a bookworm and simply collect all kinds of knowledge so that you can expound in amazing ways, and your motive is that, wait till they hear this one, or whatever it is that you're thinking to collect that knowledge, this is also a cause for fall down. Motive has to be correct. The other is prayashaha, which means over-endeavor. And generally, over-collecting leads to over-endeavor. We only need a certain amount of space, and we only need a certain amount of things. And if you get too many of them, then you have to work much harder than you need to. And you don't have time to inquire. You don't have time to hear and chant. That means you're working too hard. You have to somehow or other organize your life so that you have more time and you're not over-endeavoring for mundane things. Third one is called prajalpa, which means gossip. This is a cause for fall down. And this is an excellent place to practice yoga, which is with the tongue. And don't gossip. Look up the word gossip. Who's got the dictionary? Gossip means there's lots of things that you can say about people that you heard in the neighborhood. They pass it on to you, you pass it on to somebody else. Why? Because there's an urge to speak and just say something. You don't need to. And if you practice not doing that, don't pass on bad news unless it relates to your service and you have to pass it on in order to manage somehow. But there's no need to do that. There's no need to pick at it if there's something that you heard in the marketplace. Talk about things, restrain the tongue, talking about things that are necessary. Gossip. The word means? G-O-S-S-I-P.
Rumor or talk of personal, sensational or intimate nature.
Huh? One more time.
Rumor or talk
Rumor.
of... Rumor.
Rumor or?
Talk of a personal, sensational or intimate nature.
Of a sensational, intimate nature. Rumors. The rumor makes it halfway around the world before the truth has a time to put its shoes on. And trying to stop a rumor is like trying to unring a bell. And that saying came from a long time ago, before the internet. So you have to be really careful of gossip. It's a real distraction. Don't pass on prajalpa, don't engage in it. Janasanga means worldly association. This is a big one. Our association creates our consciousness. Whomever we associate with, we become like. And therefore, Janasanga means people who are interested in the material world. They're convinced that there's a way to be happy here. And if you associate with people like that, you'll develop an optimism for the material world. Unknowingly, it'll creep in and you'll start thinking that it's not such a bad place after all. Let me try these things. You develop bad habits. If you associate with Mayavadis, you also lose your taste for devotional service. So be careful about intimate association. It doesn't mean the kind of association you have when you go to work and you say, yes, sir, very good, sir, nice to see you, sir, very nice, okay, fine, good to see you, and you do your work. It means opening your heart in the association of materialistic persons. Srivas Pandit Prabhu.
Sorry, just to add, the word gossip you used, it came from the English word called God Sib, which was God is God and Sib is the kinsman. So I thought it came originally from the talk of the devotees of God or the kinsmen of God, but it kind of degenerated into mundane talk, I guess.
Sib means?
Sib means kinsman.
Kinsman.
Or related, yeah.
Siblings.
Yeah. So God Sib, kinsmen or Sib related. So it's interesting to see that the talks of God kind of.
Okay. We also call it Gramya Katha, or, news of the village. And that goes on everywhere now. New York Times, LA Times, Contra Costa Times, everywhere. 99.9% of it you really don't need unless you're, I don't know. unless you really have a purpose for it, it's not necessary to consume so much and hear so many different things. Yes?
So one more meaning of gossip is trivial, chatty talk.
Trivial, chatty talk. Yeah. And when two people get together, they just start going off and saying whatever they want, without thinking about it very carefully. Very chatty. Trivial. It's not important. Okay, so be careful of that. And also niyamagraha, which means accepting rules and regulations for material gain or neglecting the regulations altogether. So you have to follow what's there in Shastra, but you have to do it purposefully in order to make advancement in spiritual life. Those are that's a subject matter of the verse and the nectar of instruction, which you can go over and study, but really look at it and think how to apply it in your own life, how these things actually how they're affecting you and how you can improve in these areas. So, we should fortify ourselves. Means we should have some shelter. So one of the things is that we have to have a taste for Krishna conscious activities. This is absolutely necessary because ultimately if we don't acquire a taste, then what does Bhaktivinoda Thakur say in the song? Doyal niche Chaitanya bole. Jivanto miche hai. Your life becomes useless. So, and unproductive. So if we don't get a taste, we'll naturally be attracted to Gramya Katha, we'll naturally be attracted to the forms of this world and the variety, and we'll get interested in something here. So we have to transfer our interest to the Shastra. This is what the Shastra is for. The Shastra is very interesting to the living entity. It talks about the spiritual world, especially the Srimad Bhagavatam. There are topics there that can catch the mind, and we should run those topics by the mind. The mind's like a little fish. It's swimming around. Anytime it can dart off in another direction. So you have to be an expert fisherman. And you take the hook of this, the holy name and the Vedic literature, and you have to put it in front of the mind until you catch it. And once the mind is caught on Krishna Katha, then you can reel it in. So you have to get a taste for hearing and chanting. That's very important. To not fall down. And the other thing that's very important is to take shelter of friends who love you. You have to have some real friendship in devotional service. Find some people who really care about you and have intimate association with them, because it's our nature to have intimate association. If we become loners, if we become isolated in devotional service, we don't have close friends, then we'll eventually fall back into intimate association with worldly-minded persons. So the other thing is we should keep sadhu sangha, which I'm preaching to the choir, because the devotees who come here regularly, this fortifies us by being in the association of devotees, by hearing about Krishna and the association of devotees and so forth. If you live in a home, invite advanced spiritual people into your home. That's a sure way to also purify yourself of over-collecting and so many other things. Because when you have very advanced devotees coming to your home, you'll start looking around and say, well, we don't really need this. Let's move it out before they get here. And it's the philosophy of pouring the milk. As you pour the milk in, the ink comes out automatically. Sadhu Sangha is the most important and vital aspect for staying healthy in spiritual life. Now, it's a good idea to have this in place, have these things in place before you have any bump in the road in your devotional service. A place where you can go and talk to devotees and tell them of your shortcomings, or that you're having problem or something like that. It should be an open forum, a way you can discuss it. Don't hold it all in, but you should have a place where you can vent and also tell about whatever your shortcomings are. Because when you have that kind of open and frank discussion with a group of peers, then you can actually take it out, expose it to the light of day, and it will help you to fortify yourself and to deal with those problems individually, one by one, so that they don't gradually drag you away from devotional service. Now, feed the tree of life. Now, this is an analogy about how we have to stay nourished on many levels. So, first of all, deep roots. When the tree of life has deep roots. So that means you have to have realized spiritual knowledge. So, Tashcharadhana munayo jnana vairagya yuktaya pashyantyatmani chatmanam bhaktya shuta grihitaya. Sutta Goswami says to the sages at Naimasaranya that the serious student becomes fortified by hearing from the Vedanta Shruti, and he gets knowledge and detachment. These things are necessary to protect us from the onslaught of Māyā. And that has to go very deep. So, I've said this before, but the first time I met Prabhupada, I was very impressed. I was at a darshan in San Francisco, and our temple president was telling about how many books we were distributing, and Prabhupada looked right at me and said, "You must also read the books." And he was very stern about it. And he talked about it for some time afterwards. And in his books, for instance, the Chaitanya Charitamrita, he makes astounding statements. One of them is that unless all my students read all my books, from beginning to end, then they will take back to eating and sleeping, and then they'll fall down. So you really do have to be on a course to cultivate deep spiritual knowledge, because Māyā is not playing around. One of my godbrothers told me once he had a long spell away from Krishna consciousness. He had been dragged out the door, and he said, it's no joke. He said, Māyā doesn't just pull you down, but she eviscerates you. You know what that means? Yes? What does it mean?
Pull out your intestines.
To pull out your intestines. That's what evisceration means. She eviscerates you, and she'll wrap your intestines around her walking stick as an ornament, he said. And he said it with the greatest kind of realization in a group of devotees. You know, having been trounced by Māyā very, very heavily, he said, don't think it's a light thing. She will pull you down into the darkest depths, pull out your intestines, and wrap them around her walking stick as an ornament. So you have to remember that it's important to get those roots deep into the ground, those spiritual roots. You should be fortified with spiritual knowledge. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati was constantly engaging his students in a debate to make sure that they understood the philosophy. And he also started this Bhakti Shastri program. Prabhupada carried it forward, but he wanted everyone to get into this, a deep study of the knowledge, and also through realization. We have to have knowledge and realization. This is the roots of the tree that go deep. Next is the trunk. So we also have to have emotional well-being in our life. So sometimes people have a lot of knowledge and so forth, but they're out of balance emotionally. It means this goes back to kuyamakyati prichiti, or having deep relationships in devotional service. You have to have some friendships, people who love you and you love them, and there's time when you can actually, intimate time that you can spend, and you're fulfilled on an emotional level. People need that. And those kinds of relationships are available, and we should cultivate them and feel emotionally balanced and fulfilled. That's the trunk. Then, of course, the fruits. There are fruits that come from the tree, sharing our realizations and serving others by giving those realizations out. The more we distribute what we have, the more it increases. So you have to think of our existence in spiritual life, so to speak, as a tree, and all parts of the tree have to be in order and nourished. Couple points. Mayapur.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, small question. When you say sharing realization, and usually observed, everyone is very fond of talking. So on one hand, we have to be humble. I mean, let's say there's a discussion, everyone has a lot of points to talk. I'm not talking about a formal lecture, but even amongst the devotees, a group of devotees now. So where do we draw it? I mean, sharing realization at the same time being a good listener or being humble. Let's say a topic is going on about Bhagavad Gita. Everyone says, I know this. So I'm not sure if my question is clear, but...
Well, in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Srila Prabhupada says that devotees should be like scientists. Scientists at Harivamsha Prabhu's schools, Stanford, they sit around in these big old chairs, and they have corduroy jackets, and they have little patches on the elbows. You have to have that if you're a professor. And then you lean back, and then they talk about their scientific discoveries and how their research is going. Can you confirm this? Confirmed. So he said Prabhupada says in the same way, devotees, they're cultivating knowledge, they're practicing, they should take time to share their realizations. It's something we cultivate. When I was just in Baltimore a couple weekends ago, we had a Sankirtan day. We all went out together. We heard and chanted together in the morning, then we went out and distributed the knowledge door to door. And then we met in a little grassy tree area right in the apartment complex. And we took a couple hours to just go around, and everyone talked about their realizations for the day. What did it mean to them? What did they see? And profound. Everyone had something, from the people who were there for the first time, and other people had been around a long time, had some realization. And so we should talk about those. We should also, if we have questions or doubts, doubting is a function of the intelligence. And in Krishna consciousness, we may hear something that sounds slightly contradictory. We don't understand the philosophy exactly. We should find competent people to discuss those things with. I have a whole Rolodex full of names. And so, when I get on a thread of philosophy, I can start either sending out emails to certain people or calling them on Skype and say, okay, I got one for you. Let's talk about this. Just today I was talking to Keshava Bharati Maharaj, and I talked to a list of other devotees that I regularly stay in touch with to discuss philosophy. Siddhanta bolya chitana kara alash iha hoite Krishna lage shudrid manash. That the mind becomes fixed up when the Siddhanta is clear. Siddhanta bolya chitta nakara alash. Don't be lazy about that. You should always be pushing it. Always a new thread, trying to take that further. Look at the Prayers Personified Vedas, that story that comes near the end of the Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th canto. And in there you'll find that the sages, what are they doing? They're sitting discussing philosophy. It's very interesting. And we should do that a lot and become absorbed in those kinds of things and then share our realizations. Mukharavind.
On the similar line, Prabhas Prabhu has messaged earlier, but now, actually I heard in a Prabhupada preaching that even a little doubt put in our heart due to bad association can cause a fall down, like a crack in a water dam turns into a big hole causing flood.
There it is. Profound, a little crack. Thanks, Prabhash. That, seal up those cracks. If you have a doubt about something, then talk about it. Bring it out. Especially if you have a group of trusted devotees, you can discuss these things in the association, and you clarify it. Then you've got a lightness in your step. As soon as there's some doubt in that, you become heavy-hearted. You start thinking, well, maybe it's this, maybe that. Then it slows down your progress in devotional service. So you have to clarify, clear the doubts. Yes. Go ahead. You got the microphone. You got the hot hand.
So, Prabhu, can you elaborate a little bit more about the emotional connection need?
Prabhupada talks, I don't have it ready exactly where it is in the second canto, but I have it marked in my book at home. I'd have to look it up. But Prabhupada talks about taking sannyas. This is a very important point because Sannyas, he says, doesn't mean just giving up everything, but he says it means moving into higher association and taking shelter of higher association. And there's a way in which that means that I see the most successful people, I'm just giving sannyasa as an example because it's very rare that people take sannyasa in this age, not even that recommended. But the ones that do, who are very successful, they have maybe a mentor that they're taking shelter of. Brahmacharis, I can say in brahmachari life, I lived in the brahmachari ashram for 13 years, best years of my life. And you know, the whole attitude in the brahmachari ashram is to take shelter of higher association, to work under, you know, a mentor. And so when we move into something, if we're giving up the material world, it means we're giving it up for a more intimate connection to spiritual association. There's nothing more fortifying, gratifying than actually having intimate association with very advanced people, very advanced devotees. It's palpable. You can feel it. You feel the satisfaction if you can sit in the association of advanced people and then develop a kind of rapport. And there are ways in which to develop that rapport. And that's why Rupa Goswami mentions in the 5th verse of the Nectar of Instruction, Krishneti yasya giritam manasadriyeta dikshasti chet pranatibishcha bhajantamisham shushushaya bhanadamigdamananyamanya nindari shunya ridamipsita sangalabhya. He says, in all cases, we should seek out association, and we should associate with people properly. For the person who's chanting Hare Krishna but not initiated, we should offer obeisances in our mind. To the person who's already initiated, we should offer obeisances. That means there's some rapport there. And then towards the very advanced devotees, we should be inquiring, we should do service, and so forth like that. There's an intimate connection. A lot of that's emotional. It's not just mechanical. When you're talking about approaching someone, as Krishna says in Gita, Tadvidi pranipatena prashnena sevaya upadakshanti te jnanam jnaninas tatvadarshinaha. That's approach a realized person. And how? With inquiry, with service, with surrender, and so forth. Those are, that requires some emotional connection, like that. That help?
I think it's a nature of, you know, the sort maybe we have. I mean, I was just thinking, is that emotional connection is we can have in a family? Is that is also, you know, if it is an advanced discussion or it's more, you know.
Yeah, in a family?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we are emotional beings. We have feelings. We're sentient, right? We can't just do away with feelings. So those feelings, when they're connected to Krishna, in the family, for instance, in the 10th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, 14th chapter, there's a discussion with Shukadeva Goswami. Shukadeva Goswami says that until one's family is centered around Krishna, it's just a prison house. And then all of one's attachments in that family are like shackles. But he says once the family is centered around Krishna, then it becomes a spiritually, emotionally, you know, healthy connection. We have to have connection with other people. One of the most dangerous things, and one of the reasons that people do fall down in devotional service, is they become isolated. They can become isolated. And they think that either they think or that somehow or other they just don't make connection with other people. And then people go through major changes in their life. And that you've heard of this term midlife crisis? Yes or yes? Going through it? You're going through it now? You're not midlife yet. It can happen early. Midlife crisis means that it's actually a phenomena. It's common enough that it's named something. You know, that at a certain point in life, people start rethinking. I noticed in my life, at every decade, it's marked by a certain kind of mentality. I mean, when I look back and I see how the Shastra points out, you know, in boyhood you play, and then there's, in adolescence, there's all kinds of, being enamored of the material world. Senses are so strong and so forth. And even growing up in Krishna consciousness for the most part in my life, I see those decades go by, and you have to connect yourself to Krishna consciousness and engage all those emotions in Krishna service. Because we have them, they're there. You have to connect them to Krishna.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Prabhuji, this is a question which overlaps many things, Vaishnava Aparadha, criticism, justification that we spoke of. So sometimes a person might be talking, finding faults, if it can be called that, in the genuine interest of the hearer or in the interest of actually the Prabhupada's mission, like that. But that can be misconstrued as gossip, or it can be mistaken for prajalpa. So is there some way to distinguish this, that actually this person is doing it out of genuine concern, or this person is
What are they doing?
When the person is actually probably, say, finding out a fault in someone, right? So is there...
Well, some people are deputed to find out faults in others. That's their job. And for instance, if you're a teacher, you should find out the faults in your students. And then according to how expert of a teacher you are, or managers also. Peter Burwash was telling me, you know Peter Burwash? Yes. He's an excellent manager. He's had a worldwide company that's got the highest ratings in management over time in customer service and so forth. And he was telling me he learned a lot of the management techniques from Prabhupada. I wrote them all down. And one of the things he said he does is when he gets a new employee in his company, he says, how do you like to take your criticism? What kind of person are you? How do you like to, if there's something you're doing wrong, what's the best way for us to let you know? And then, okay, we'll write that down. That's what you like a gentle way, right? And the other person, I like to know right away, or something like that. If you're expert, you know how, you sense how people react, and then you can administer that. But it may be your job to do that. If it's not your job, then you don't have, luckily, you don't have to point out people's faults.
One more on humility. How exactly can it become unhealthy in the way that actually humility, can it lead to
humility? First, you have to understand what humility means.
Yeah,
humility means to take yourself out of the center and put Krishna in the center. So that means you put Krishna's interests first. That's what humility means. So what did Arjuna do on the battlefield of Kurukshetra? Was he humble by going out and fighting a war? I mean, he was intense. He was a fierce warrior, and he was going after people, killing them. Is that humble? Yes. Because according to our definition, Krishna said, go fight the war. He said, I don't want to fight. It's not good for me. Because if I kill all my family members, who am I going to show the kingdom to? Nobody appreciate it. So Krishna said, I want you to fight. And he said, okay, at the end, I'll fight for you. That's humility. You don't do it for you, you do it for Krishna. Humility doesn't just mean to be docile. That's a mistake. Yes.
Between fear and love, I would always choose love. I never thought about fear on God, but the concept of loving God is very attractive. Putting the same principle of fear and love, if I don't fear about fall down, I'll fall down because I need to have some kind of fear. But I don't want to live with that fear. How to be Krishna conscious and not be fearful?
Well, there are 4 motivating factors Bhaktivinoda Thakur mentions. Fear is at the bottom of the list. Sometimes it's necessary. And then above fear comes prospect, means what do I get out of this? And then comes duty, Māyā, which means whatever it is, it's in the Shastra, I'm doing it. And then above that is love, when the motivation is really you just want to please the other person. But Prahlad Maharaj in his prayers to Lord Nrsimhadev expresses this fear, healthy fear of Māyā. We should have that healthy fear of Māyā. That Vishnu Māyā is so strong that I shouldn't think myself above her wiles. At any time I can be pulled down. And that is actually the main technique for not falling into Māyā, is to maintain that healthy fear. Don't think I'm liberated. Don't think I'm okay. That I can cheat now. I can let up now. But you should always think, not that you have to become neurotic either, but you should maintain that healthy fear of Māyā. The great acharyas show that by example, like Prahlad Maharaj, to be afraid of Māyā. And when we develop full-blown love for God, we won't be preoccupied with fear of Māyā. But in the stage of practice, we should cultivate that and maintain it. And even afterwards, if we're in an exalted, liberated position, we should still act like a neophyte for the benefit of others. Yes?
The 4 prospects that you mentioned.
Fear, prospect, duty, love. Each one higher. See if there's anything else. How to make a comeback. Should we hear about that? Yes. Okay, a couple things according to Shastra. Sopada mulam bhajata priyasya taktanya bhavasa hare priyasaha vikarma yachchot patitam katanchid tunoti sarvam pradishani vishtaha. According to Karabhajana Muni in the 11th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, the devotee who is performing devotional service dutifully and then somehow or other falls down. Vikarma yachchot patitam katanchit. Somehow or other, don't ask me how, Māyā comes along. So probably just say second nature habit. It's there in the DNA practically. And somehow somebody falls into some vikarmic activity and performing devotional service. So padamulam bhajata priyasya chakyanya bhavasa hari priyasa. Because that person, what page? 272. 274 in your shloka book. And if you don't have them, for all of those of you at home, you can call in and we'll send you a shloka book right away. We also have the perfectly complete Srila Prabhupada library, which has Bhagavatams, Chaitanya Charitamritas, every book Prabhupada ever published, all the lectures, a year-long subscription to BTG, kartals, madanga, deities, tilak, a book stand, everything you need. It's only $1,008. Operators are standing by to take your call. So this verse, Supada Mulam Bhajata Priyasya, someone who has taken shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord, and their mood is that they're giving up everything for Him. If they have vikarma yachchot patitam katanchid, tunoti sarvam hridi sanivishta, Krishna makes up for it. You don't have to do prayaschitta, you just have to go on doing your service. And now that comes to how to make a comeback. So, you go on doing your devotional service no matter what. First thing is you have to own the problem. Whatever you did wrong, you have to own it. Don't make somebody else own it, because then you'll never get over it and you'll never rise back to the position. But you can make a comeback. There's always justifiable reasons that you give yourself that it's somebody else's fault. That's what the mind wants to do. So somebody else made me do this. Not my fault. It was because, what? I don't know. I don't want anyone to hear it. Somebody else's fault, not mine. But own it 100%. If you can own your fall down 100%, then you can actually make the comeback. The other thing is you should chant constantly. And this Prabhupada mentions in the verse, Shri Prambhavati Tarmatma, Shashvash Chantiminagachati, Kontya Prajijanihi Name Bhakti Pradashati. He says if somebody falls down, the only remedy is to chant constantly. And for those who can't chant constantly, it means at least every day. Then don't go away no matter what. The mind of a person who has fallen is like a bucking bronco. To tame the bronco, you must stay in the saddle. So if you make a mistake, your mind's going to take off like a bucking bronco. You have to stay in the saddle. You have to keep chanting, and you have to tolerate whatever, humiliating situation you're in, whatever it is, you have to keep in the saddle. And if you do, Shri Prambhavati Dharmatma Shashvash Chantin Nagachiti. Krishna says himself, declare it boldly, Arjuna, my devotee never perishes. And in the previous verse he said, api chet sudaracharo, even if he does something abominable, he's still sadhu, because he stays in the saddle. He keeps up his process of devotional service. That's how to get through this life. Even if there's some exhibition of worldliness, one will then rise to the highest position. Mam chayo vyabhicharena bhakti yogena sevate sagunan samatitaitan brahma bhuyaya kalpate. One who performs devotional service in all circumstances and does not fall down rises to the level of Brahman. So now we have 2 minutes and 20 seconds to put away all the books, and we're going to try to beat the record, but in the most efficient and respectful manner. We're going to stand up and we're going to put all the books in book stands, and we'll try to do it under 2 minutes. On your mark, get set, go. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Nachari Armarman, Nachari Armarman, Nachari Armarman, Nachari Armarman, hey, Nachari Armarman, Nachari Armarman, Nachari Armarman, Nachari Armarman.